I'm 32, a senior partnerships director at a global tech firm, and the unofficial ATM of my family. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when I thought success would finally earn me respect. But now, every call from my parents starts with a casual, "How's work?" and ends with some variation of, "Your cousin Emily's graduation is coming up. You'll help out, won't you?" Help out. That phrase has haunted me for years. From covering Uncle Ray's car repair to paying for Grandma's medical copay when no one else stepped up. Every single time, I was the one who quietly picked up the tab, while Emily floated through life on a cushion of collective praise and admiration. Emily, the golden child, the miracle, the pride of the family. She was 2 years younger than me and had been everyone's favorite since the moment she won her first spelling bee at age 7. While I was knee-deep in engineering boot camps, climbing the ranks in a male-dominated industry, Emily was being serenaded by my mother at every family dinner. She got into Princeton, Mom would beam, eyes glistening like she herself had cracked the Ivy League. When I closed a multi-million-dollar partnership with a Fortune 500 brand last fall, Dad responded with, "Nice. So, how much are they paying you now?" Not congratulations, not even curiosity about the work, just numbers. At first I told myself it was just the way they were, old school, financially stressed, not good at expressing pride. But the older I got, the more I realized it wasn't just a communication gap. It was a choice, a hierarchy. They had decided that my worth was measured in dollars, that Emily's was measured in dreams. Last Thanksgiving, I watched Emily announce her plans for law school. The room erupted. Aunt Sandy cried. Uncle Marvin raised a toast. Mom clapped so hard she almost knocked over the gravy boat. When I mentioned my latest project, leading our firm's expansion into East Asia, I got polite nods and a few distracted smiles. "That's nice, sweetie," Mom said before turning back to Emily. "Tell us more about your applications. Are you aiming for Harvard?" I could have screamed. Instead, I poured myself another glass of wine and smiled. I always smile. Because if I don't, I'm the bitter one, the jealous one, the one who makes family gatherings uncomfortable. This week, Emily is graduating from Princeton. The whole family's flying out for the ceremony. I'll be there too, wearing a carefully curated dress that says, "I'm supportive but self-contained," armed with a generous donation I made to help cover part of the event's cost. Anonymous, of course, because heaven forbid I overshadow Emily on her big day. But something feels different this time. Heavier. Like a storm is gathering beneath the surface of my polite smiles. Like maybe I'm finally done playing my part in the family narrative. They still see me as the wallet. But I'm more than that. And I think they're about to find out just how much more. The Princeton lawn buzzed with celebration. Proud parents clutched floral bouquets, siblings juggled smartphones, and graduates floated in cap and gown euphoria. I stood just off to the side, clutching a discreet envelope containing my anonymous contribution to the post-ceremony banquet, not that anyone would think to thank me. Emily looked radiant, of course. That kind of classic, effortless glow that family lore had dubbed natural brilliance. Her crimson and black robes flowed behind her as she hugged relatives and posed for photos, smile unwavering. I waited quietly beside a hedgerow, letting them take the spotlight. It's a skill I've mastered over the years, being present but invisible. A chameleon of usefulness, stepping in only when a check is needed or an errand must be run. "There she is!" My mother's voice sliced through the air. She hugged me with the sort of stiff-armed enthusiasm reserved for airport greetings and public appearances. "You made it. Emily will be so thrilled." I smiled. "Wouldn't have missed it." Dad pulled me into a quick, distracted embrace, already craning his neck for the dean. "We need to speak with him before the banquet." Big opportunity. Big opportunity for who? I almost asked. But I knew better. The ceremony passed in a blur of pomp and overplayed nostalgia. When Emily took the stage, her name echoed across the field like a family anthem. Cameras snapped, voices cheered, even I clapped harder than I needed to, out of some long-conditioned reflex to be seen as supportive. Good sport. Good sister cousin. Good daughter. Afterwards, the crowd swelled into photo clusters and champagne toasts. Emily made her rounds like a politician, accepting congratulations with polished grace. "Come take a picture with us," Aunt Sandy called, motioning me over. I moved into frame, crouching beside Grandma Doris's wheelchair. Right before the flash, I saw my mother whisper something to Emily. They both smiled, heads tilted just enough to keep it from looking conspiratorial. "You're going to stay for the dinner, right?" Emily asked after the photos, linking her arm through mine. "It's going to be amazing. The dean's coming. A couple of big donors, too." I nodded, heart thudding with unease. "Of course." She hugged me suddenly. "I'm so glad you're here." Really? I knew that tone. The one people use when they're trying to soften you for a favor. Or a blow. We moved toward the banquet hall as a unit, the family entourage buzzing with excitement, their admiration orbiting one person only. I walked a few paces behind, eyes scanning the lavish setup. Everything was perfect, which made the sinking feeling in my gut all the more ominous. Something was coming, and I could feel it in the air like static before a storm. The banquet hall glittered like a charity gala. Soft jazz spilled from the corner quartet, and the tables were dressed in white linen and fresh florals. I found my name, first name only, on a place card at the far end of the family's reserved table, beside the kitchen doors. Classic. Emily sat at the center, flanked by our grandparents, parents, and the dean of students himself. Her smile never faltered as relatives circled like moths around her flame. "I still remember when she was just a little girl with big dreams," Aunt Sandy said, dabbing her eyes. "And now look at her. Princeton with honors. She's going to change the world," someone added. "She already has," Mom chimed in, lifting her glass. "Our Emily, the pride of the family." I took a sip of water. Across the table, a cousin I barely recognized leaned toward me. "You work in computers, right?" "Tech," I said. "I oversee international partnerships for—" Right, he interrupted. "Must be nice. But stressful, huh? All those hours, no time for a family." I smiled tightly. "I manage." He'd already turned away before I finished the sentence. When dessert was served, my father stood. He tapped a spoon against his wineglass with theatrical precision. The room quieted around him. "Tonight," he began, beaming with pride, "is not just about celebrating academic achievement. It's about family. About legacy." He reached for Emily's hand and squeezed it. "Emily, you are everything we dreamed for the next generation. Smart, kind, principled. Your future is limitless, and it's our honor to help you achieve it." I tilted my head. A low buzz was building at the back of my mind. "And, as a family," he continued, "we believe in investing in that future. Which is why we're thrilled to share that your law school tuition is already taken care of." The crowd murmured in approval. Emily gasped theatrically. Dad smiled wider, gesturing toward me. "All thanks to your generous cousin, she's covering it in full. Every cent." The applause was thunderous. My heart stopped. Emily leapt up, tears in her eyes. "You're serious?" "Oh my God." She rushed toward me, hugging me so tightly I spilled wine onto my lap. The dean stood, raising his glass. What a beautiful act of family generosity, truly inspiring. Cameras flashed. I was frozen, trapped in a moment I had no part in authoring. The applause continued, echoing like laughter behind a closed door. No one noticed I hadn't spoken a word. The applause faded, but the ripple didn't. It pulsed through the banquet hall in the form of claps on my shoulder, nods of approval, half smiles from people who'd never so much as asked what I actually did for a living. I hadn't even opened my mouth, but apparently my silence was now synonymous with generosity. Emily clung to my arm like a trophy. "You're amazing, this means everything. I thought law school was just a dream, and now," her voice cracked on cue, "you made it real." I gently pulled away, forcing a smile. "Emily, she has no husband, no kids, just money sitting around, right?" She laughed too loudly, nudging the dean with her elbow. "Our successful little banker." "I'm not a banker," I said quietly. Dad stepped beside me, placing a firm hand on my back. "You're being modest, sweetheart." I turned toward him. "I never agreed to this." He blinked. "What?" "I never said I'd pay for Emily's law school." "That was never discussed." Silence. You could hear the clink of silverware against abandoned dessert plates. The energy in the room shifted from warm to curdled. "What are you talking about?" Mom hissed, her smile freezing mid-expression. "We discussed it at dinner last month." "No," I said evenly. "You mentioned Emily's dreams, and I said law school was expensive. That's it." Emily's hand dropped from my arm. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed into something colder. "Wait, you're not serious, right?" "I'm very serious. Around us, the air thickened with awkwardness. The dean looked between us, his glass paused mid-toast. A woman at the next table started recording with her phone, not even discreetly. Dad's jaw clenched. This isn't the time, or the place. No, I agreed. It should have never happened this way. Mom took a step forward, voice trembling with rage beneath the sweet coating. Why are you doing this, in front of everyone? I'm not doing anything. You made a public announcement about money I never agreed to spend. That's not generosity. That's coercion. The word hit like a slap. Gasps scattered across the room. Emily backed up a step like I'd physically struck her. I thought, I thought you loved me. I do, I said, my voice low. But I'm not your bank. For a moment, no one moved. Then Mom turned to the room, arms raised like she was on stage. She's just overwhelmed, everyone. She didn't mean it. Of course she's paying. She always does. I looked at her. Really looked. She didn't even flinch. And in that moment, I knew. She wasn't ashamed of lying. She was ashamed I'd told the truth. I needed air. Not the kind you find in recycled banquet hall corners, but real air. Unfiltered, unscripted. My heels clicked too loudly as I made my way down the corridor outside the reception room, past framed portraits of past deans and honorees. I didn't stop until I reached the empty alcove outside the restrooms. I leaned against the cool tile wall, willing my breath to steady, my pulse to behave. Inside, laughter and music resumed like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just been publicly volunteered to finance a $250,000 education without my consent. That's when I heard it. Voices. Low, familiar. Just around the corner. I told you she'd react, my father's voice, flat, not surprised. She embarrassed herself, my mother snapped. She could have smiled, played along for 10 minutes. That's all we needed. She'll come around, Dad replied. She always does. She better. I've already told the donors it's done. Emily needs that scholarship. This was our only shot. I felt the breath leave my lungs like I'd been punched. Emily's voice chimed in next, quiet, sharp. You said she wouldn't say no. You promised. She won't, Mom said quickly. This is just a tantrum. She'll feel guilty by tomorrow. She always does. She lives alone in that big apartment. No kids, no real family. Guilt is her soft spot. They didn't even bother lowering their voices now. Maybe they thought I was gone. Maybe they didn't care. My feet refused to move. I stood frozen, listening as they reduced me to a transaction. A backup plan. A line item on someone else's spreadsheet of dreams. She owes us, Mom said coldly. After everything we've done for her. Done for me? The phrase rattled around in my skull like a scream in a locked room. I thought of every birthday they'd forgotten, every achievement they brushed off, every call that started with pleasantries and ended with a veiled ask for money. No. They hadn't done things for me. They had done things to me. I stepped back quietly, retracing my path down the hallway like a ghost. Back straight. Expression blank. I had to get out of there. But not before I figured out how to make sure this manipulation, this narrative, this trap they'd tried to spring on me, collapsed on them instead. Because I wasn't the girl who smiled through betrayal anymore. They thought I'd cave out of guilt. They were about to learn what happens when the family ATM closes for good. When I returned to the banquet hall, my seat was still there, untouched, as though I hadn't just shattered the illusion they'd carefully constructed. But now every eye flicked toward me like I was a glass about to fall. A few smiles came, weak and tight. A handful of phones tilted ever so subtly in my direction. I sat down slowly, crossed my legs, picked up my napkin with surgical precision. If they wanted a show, they'd get one, but not the one they expected. Emily wasn't looking at me anymore. She laughed too loudly at something the dean said, and I noticed how her hand trembled around her wineglass. My mother sat 2 seats over, her jaw tight, smile plastered on like frosting over a burnt cake. Then my father stood. He tapped the microphone again, same rhythm as earlier. 3 clear notes of authority. The room quieted like it had been trained to. Before we begin tonight's dinner, I just want to say how honored we are, he started, scanning the crowd like a seasoned performer. To have such an incredible group of people here to celebrate our Emily. Applause. Not quite as enthusiastic as before, but enough to warm the room. He continued. Family means everything. And tonight, more than anything, we're celebrating what it looks like when family supports one another, when we lift each other up, when we invest in each other's future. My grip on the napkin tightened. Emily's journey is just beginning, he went on, and I want to recognize someone who's played a critical role, not just tonight, but for years. I raised my eyes and met his across the room. He didn't flinch. My daughter, he said, the one who made this dream possible, who showed what true generosity looks like. Another round of applause, this one more cautious. And so, as a toast to family unity, to future dreams, and to a heart as big as her career success, let's raise a glass. Dozens of glasses lifted. To family, he said. To family, he said. To family, the room echoed. I didn't raise mine. I just stared, calmly, at my father. At the crowd. At the pageant they'd choreographed without my consent. I could feel the weight of the lie hanging in the air like smoke, beautiful and suffocating. But I wasn't choking on it. Not anymore. I should have known it wouldn't end with a toast. As the servers cleared the first course and soft piano music resumed, I tried to blend into the noise. Let them believe I'd gone silent, that I'd folded like they said I would. But then Dad stood again. He didn't wait for the microphone this time. Just raised his voice slightly, enough to silence the nearest tables. Before we move on, he said, smiling broadly, there's one more announcement we'd like to make. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Mother beamed beside him, her hand lightly touching Emily's shoulder. He turned to the crowd. You all know how special this day is. Emily's worked hard, and her next chapter, law school, will require even more dedication. Nods and murmurs of agreement circled the room. That's why tonight, he continued, looking directly at me, we're proud to share that her journey will continue without the burden of student debt. He paused just long enough for the suspense to build. Our daughter, he said, has generously committed to fully funding Emily's law school tuition every year, every cent, as her gift to this brilliant young woman and to our family. The room exploded. Applause thundered against the marble walls. Laughter, cheers, champagne glasses lifted before I could breathe. Emily gasped again like it was the first she'd heard of it. Oh my God, I don't know what to say. She turned to me, eyes glassy, full of rehearsed wonder. Thank you. Thank you so much. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Not because I didn't have words, but because I was watching the last thread of illusion dissolve before me. They really thought I wouldn't say anything. That I would nod, smile, and take my cue like an obedient cast member. Even the dean looked impressed. That's remarkable, he said, raising his glass in my direction. A true act of vision and leadership. Bravo. Donors clapped. Professors nodded. Someone shouted, she's a saint. No one noticed I hadn't agreed, hadn't confirmed, hadn't moved. I looked at my father, at his satisfied, practiced expression, at my mother, who wouldn't meet my eyes, at Emily, performing gratitude like she was auditioning for a scholarship pageant. They'd set the stage. Now they were waiting for me to take the bow. But I wasn't going to bow. I was going to burn the whole damn theater down. I stood. Slowly, calmly, like I wasn't about to detonate the fantasy they'd spent the last hour constructing. The room hushed again, confusion rippling through the applause like static. I didn't need the mic. I let my voice carry, clear, firm, unshaken. That was never discussed, I said. Dead silence. I haven't agreed to fund Emily's law school. I could feel the pause stretch, like the entire room forgot how to blink. Emily's smile froze on her face. My father's hands dropped to his sides. My mother's wineglass tilted ever so slightly, a trembling thread of Chardonnay dribbling down the stem. The dean cleared his throat. I'm sorry, what? I didn't agree to this, I repeated. There was no conversation, no consent, no gift. Just an announcement I didn't authorize. Someone gasped. Another reached for their phone. A cousin whispered something sharp and urgent to his wife. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling. Wait, are you serious? You're not paying? I turned to her. I never said I would. But you gave that donation for the graduation, she stammered. You always help. I made a private contribution to support the ceremony, I said. I didn't sign up to bankroll your next 4 years. My mother lunged for the microphone then, smiling through clenched teeth. She's just overwhelmed, everyone. You know how she gets. It's been a big week. She's under a lot of pressure. Don't, I said sharply. She stopped. This isn't confusion, I continued. It's clarity. I work hard. I've built a career, a life, and I'm tired of being volunteered without consent. I'm not the family wallet. I'm not the silent funder. I'm not the villain for saying no. A murmur swept through the room like wind before rain. Emily's voice cracked. But I already told everyone. That's not my problem, I said. My father stepped forward now, eyes flashing. Don't do this. You'll embarrass all of us. You embarrassed yourselves the second you decided to lie in front of a room full of people. More murmurs. Someone was definitely filming now. I turned to the crowd, the professors, the donors, the friends of the family who suddenly looked very unsure of where to focus their eyes. I didn't agree to pay for anything, I said one last time. Then I sat down. And the silence that followed didn't feel awkward. It felt honest. The silence didn't last long. My mother moved like she'd been launched, snatching the microphone from the podium with a speed that would have impressed an auctioneer. Her smile was gone now, replaced by something colder, sharper. Well, she said, voice quivering with false composure, I suppose some people enjoy making everything about themselves. A few uncomfortable chuckles. Most people just froze, caught between drama and decorum. She's always been like this, Mom continued, a little too proud of her money, a little too obsessed with control. My stomach dropped. I didn't look away. I wanted her to see that I saw her clearly now. She doesn't understand what it means to support a family, she added, eyes sweeping the room. She has no children. No husband. Just spreadsheets and frequent flyer miles. Gasps. A few mouths fell open. I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God." She could have done this quietly, my mother said. Handled it in private. But instead, she chose tonight, Emily's night, to throw a tantrum. Emily was crying now. Perfectly timed, soft, and glistening. She buried her face in a napkin and shook her head like she couldn't believe what I'd done. She's just jealous, one of my cousins muttered under her breath, loud enough for me to hear. She doesn't want anyone else to shine, another added. I felt the sting. Not from their words, but from how rehearsed they sounded. Like this wasn't spontaneous. Like the backup singers had always known their lines. You don't even need the money, a third cousin called out. What's it to you? It's just tuition. You make more in a month than most of us do in a year. She's right, my mother snapped. It's pocket change to you. But to us? To Emily? It's everything. The dean looked like he wanted to vanish. The donors stared at their napkins. No one knew which way to look. She's turning her back on us, Mom finished, voice sharp and final. On her family. I stood, slowly, again. I didn't need a microphone. I'm not turning my back, I said. I'm finally standing up. And the room, so eager to crown me a villain, suddenly wasn't so sure anymore. It was my mother who broke the stillness, again. She slammed her hand on the edge of the table, hard enough that silverware jumped and glasses clinked dangerously. Her eyes were wild now, no longer masking the fury behind a smile, no longer pretending this was anything other than what it was. You will do this, she said, voice shaking, eyes locked on mine. Across the room, Emily hiccuped through her tears, muttering something about how she didn't ask for this, even as she clung to the attention like a drowning woman clutching a raft made of pity. The dean stood, awkward and pale. Perhaps we can all sit down, my mother snapped, not even sparing him a glance. This is family business. He sat. You will fund Emily's tuition, she said again. You'll do it because it's the right thing. Because people are watching. Because you owe us that much. I blinked slowly. I owe you? Yes, she said, voice rising. After everything we've done for you. After the sacrifices we made so you could succeed. So you could live in that high-rise apartment and fly all over the world pretending you're better than the rest of us. I never said I was better, I said quietly. I just stopped pretending I was the same. Her mouth opened like she'd been slapped. The silence that followed was heavy, humid with tension. Emily stepped forward now, tears painting streaks across her foundation. Why are you doing this to me? She sobbed. I didn't ask for any of this. I thought you loved me. I do, I said. But love isn't a blank check. Gasps again, murmurs swelling like a tide. You're disgracing us, my mother hissed. In front of everyone. Good, I said. Maybe they should see what it really looks like behind the curtain. Then she said it. The final blow. The knife wrapped in silk. If you don't do this, she said, you'll shame the whole family. You'll ruin everything we've built. We'll never forgive you. I met her gaze, steady as stone. And I said it clearly, loudly enough for every donor and guest and whispering cousin to hear. Then don't forgive me. And just like that, I sat back down. Unbothered, unapologetic, and completely done. The silence this time was different. Not stunned, not awkward, heavy, unforgiving, like the collective breath of a room that had realized it was standing on the wrong side of the truth. Phones were still recording, faces partially hidden behind glass screens, red dots glowing like judgment. A woman at the donor table whispered something to her husband. The dean slowly removed his napkin from his lap, folding it with nervous precision and setting it on the table like a man preparing for fallout. Emily wiped at her cheeks, mascara streaked across her chin. Her tears no longer drew comfort. No one rushed to hand her tissues now. My father remained standing, hands clenched at his sides. His voice came low, flat. You're making a scene. I looked at him calmly. No. I'm ending one. Across the room, a cousin lowered her phone and cleared her throat. Honestly, she said, just loud enough, this is not how you handle a gift, even if it was real. Another voice. Feels like she got ambushed. Murmurs grew louder, threading through the tables like a current. Guests who had applauded minutes ago now avoided eye contact. The dean stood again, this time choosing his words more carefully. I think it's best we respect boundaries, he said, voice taut with discomfort. No one should feel pressured to make commitments in this setting. A few donors nodded. One of them, a silver-haired man in a tailored navy suit, rose to his feet, offered a brief, polite nod in my direction, and walked out. One by one, others followed. My mother's face twisted as she watched them go. Panic bloomed behind her eyes, but she was still trying to hold the mask together. She's lying, she snapped suddenly, pointing at me like I was a threat to be contained. She said she'd do this, she promised. I didn't, I replied, calm as ever. And even if I had, your plan was to trap me in front of an audience. Emily stepped back, away from her. Her voice barely above a whisper now. You told me it was already done. I had to, Mom spat. She wouldn't have said yes otherwise. That did it. The room collectively turned. This wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't confusion. It was manipulation. And now, it was unraveling fast. Emily's voice cracked, soft and hoarse like she was realizing the lie, and the stage were both collapsing around her. You promised, Mom. Her mascara was now a full map of disappointment. She looked less like the Golden Girl and more like a confused child caught in someone else's theater. I thought she wanted to, she said again, glancing at me. You always help. That doesn't mean I always will, I replied. My father stared at the floor like he could will a portal to open beneath him. My mother, however, wasn't done. You're destroying this family, she said, pointing at me like a courtroom villain. You're selfish. You've always been jealous of Emily. The room tensed. Jealous? I repeated, laughing softly. Of what? Of being used? Of being reduced to a credit card with no opinion? A few guests actually nodded. She's acting like we asked for a kidney, someone muttered. I've given this family everything, I continued. And the one time I say no, suddenly I'm the villain? Mom tried again, louder this time. It's not just about you. No, I agreed, it's about boundaries. And I'm setting one. Emily sobbed now, but no one rushed to her side. Not even our parents. The dean turned to my father and mother, clearing his throat with more confidence than before. This situation is no longer appropriate for a university-sanctioned event. I suggest we end the evening here. It was over. The illusion. The performance. The public coercion wrapped in the language of family pride. Guests stood, murmuring apologies and excuses as they shuffled toward the exits. Half of them didn't look back. The ones who did wore complicated expressions, pity, confusion, quiet respect. My mother still stood frozen, mouth parted, as if she couldn't believe the narrative had slipped from her grip. And Emily? Poor, curated, perfect Emily. Slumped back into her chair like the weight of the truth had finally settled onto her shoulders. I didn't make a speech. I didn't defend myself any further. I didn't need to. The truth was already walking out the door, one guest at a time. I stepped outside. The cool air hit like mercy. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding myself together until I crossed the threshold of the banquet hall and felt the tension begin to bleed from my shoulders. The murmurs and clinks of a disbanding event still echoed behind me, but I was already pulling out my phone. 17 missed calls. Dozens of texts, screenshots, tweets, clips of the scene posted by guests and already circulating under hashtags like hashtag scholarship ambush and hashtag family ATM. My face mid-sentence, my mother mid-accusation. And then, a message. From Aaron Tran, my mentor, the CEO of our parent company, one of the university's largest donors. Aaron Tran saw the live stream. Want me to step in? I'm 10 minutes away. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. He was the kind of man who could clear a room with a look. And the kind of person who'd always told me, don't shrink for people who only know how to grow through you. I tapped back. Me. Do it. Exactly 8 minutes later, a black car pulled up. Aaron stepped out in a perfectly tailored slate gray suit, flanked by two of the university's trustees. His presence didn't ask for attention, it demanded it. He didn't speak to me first. He nodded. That was enough. Inside, the remnants of the banquet still lingered like perfume past its welcome. Some guests still lingered near the exit, caught between gossip and disbelief. My parents were speaking in hushed tones to the dean. Emily sat in her chair, still as a painting, mascara dried like war paint. Then the door opened again. Heads turned. Aaron Tran entered, and silence followed him like a shadow. Dean Halvorsen, he said warmly, shaking the stunned man's hand. A pleasure. Aaron. Mr. Tran. I didn't realize you were. The dean's words fell apart. I wasn't supposed to be, Aaron replied smoothly. But I caught the live stream. Hard to look away from something so instructive. He turned then. To me. To see one of my top executives, an industry leader and innovator, being publicly strong-armed by her own family in front of donors and faculty? He smiled politely. That I couldn't ignore. Gasps scattered through the room like sparks. My mother stiffened. My father looked like he'd swallowed glass. I'd like to clarify something, Aaron said, voice calm, firm. This woman is not just successful, she's instrumental. She led our largest global expansion to date. She is responsible for partnerships that fund scholarships, grants, and research across 3 continents. He turned slowly, facing the crowd. She owes no one here anything. Not a dollar, not a favor, and certainly not her silence. The room was dead quiet. Aaron nodded once more toward the dean. I trust the university will take this as an opportunity to reflect on how we treat our supporters and who we allow to be humiliated on our stages. Dean Halvorsen opened his mouth, then closed it. Yes, sir? Of course. Aaron looked back at me. You all right? I nodded. Then he looked at my family, my mother, my father, Emily, the people who had written a story and cast me as the villain. And with a final, elegant shrug, he said, let me know if you want me to turn the cameras on them next. He didn't need to. They were already lit. The air inside had changed. Before, it was tight with expectation. Now, it cracked with exposure. Like every chandelier in the room had been replaced with floodlights. Aaron didn't need to raise his voice. His presence filled the space, commanding attention not through volume but certainty. The trustees flanked him like sentinels, their expressions unreadable but clearly watchful. You should all understand something, Aaron said, folding his hands behind his back as he addressed the room. This woman, he gestured to me, is not just successful. She is strategic, disciplined, and fiercely ethical. She doesn't bend under pressure, even when it's wrapped in family dinners and fake applause. The room was still. Even the servers stopped moving. Your little stunt, he said, now looking directly at my father, wasn't about celebration. It was coercion. And that, he said, turning to the dean, is not something I associate with an institution of this caliber. Dean Halvorsen nodded quickly, sweat dotting his brow. Absolutely understood. Aaron took a measured step forward. What I saw tonight was not generosity. It was manipulation cloaked in a toast. A public performance designed to shame someone into financial submission. The silence that followed was different than before. It was respect. Not for my family, for me. Emily sat frozen, her carefully curled hair falling limp at her shoulders. My mother looked like a puppet with cut strings, lips parted but no script left to read. My father's shoulders had dropped an inch lower with every sentence Aaron spoke. Then one of the trustees, an elegant black woman in a deep green silk blouse, stepped forward. I reviewed the donor logs, she said calmly. The anonymous gift that supported tonight's event came from her. She pointed to me, not the parents, not the cousin. It was flagged under her corporate affiliation last month. She looked around. So this family humiliated the only reason this event was even possible tonight? Now the shame began to change hands. People glanced at one another. Whispers started again, this time not about me, but about them. Emily let out a shaky breath. I didn't know, Mom said. She said it was already arranged. No one blames you, Emily, Aaron said gently. But you're not a victim of this woman. You're a casualty of your mother's entitlement. That landed hard. Emily's face collapsed inward, hands over her mouth. She didn't speak again. My mother tried once more. You don't know what she's really like. But no one cared anymore. The room had already made its decision. And it wasn't on her side. Aaron turned back to the center of the room like a conductor calling for silence before the final movement. I want to be perfectly clear, he said, voice steady, smooth, and absolutely lethal. The woman you tried to corner tonight, she's not just successful in the corporate sense, she's respected in global markets. Countries sign deals because she's at the table. Her name carries weight in every boardroom I've ever walked into. My mother inhaled sharply. I didn't look at her. Aaron continued. And yet, here we are. Watching her be paraded like a prize and then shackled by obligation, all because her family decided her success should belong to them. The room didn't gasp. It didn't need to. The silence was heavier than outrage. She's not selfish, Aaron added. She spent years giving, quietly, without recognition. Her name isn't even listed on tonight's donor plaque. That was her choice. Humility. Something clearly not shared by those who planned this little ambush. He turned toward the dean. And if this institution allows this kind of spectacle again, if donors feel their generosity makes them vulnerable to public coercion, then this university will lose more than its pride. The dean nodded rapidly. Understood. We will review all donor protocol immediately. The trustees didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was a verdict. Emily had stopped crying. Now she just looked, small, shrinking into herself. Her hands were still shaking. My mother wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Her mouth opened once, closed again. My father looked like a man who'd just been told his investments had collapsed. Because, in a way, they had. The investment in me, as a resource to drain. As an account that would never close. Aaron stepped back toward me, not touching, just standing near enough for solidarity to settle between us. You still have time to leave with your dignity, he told my parents. But not your reputation. That's gone. He turned to the room one last time. And for those of you filming, don't worry. The world deserves to see this. The story of a woman who said no, who drew a line, and stood on the right side of it. Phones lit up again. Not in secrecy this time, but with intention. The lie was gone, and the world was watching the truth in real time. It started with a phone vibrating at the donor table, then another, then 10, people whispering, eyes wide as they stared at their screens. At the clips, already uploaded, already captioned, family tries to trap cousin into paying $250K law school bill, backfires in public, live from the Ivy League, the ATM says no, corporate exec outsmarts her own parents. The hashtags were multiplying like wildfire. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The damage was moving for me. Across the room, Emily's fiancé's mother had pulled him aside. She held her phone close to his chest, whispering with urgency. The fiancé's father stood behind them, stiff, nodding slowly with the kind of disapproval that comes from pedigree, not passion. Emily caught the exchange. She blinked fast and stood, stepping toward them. Wait, what's happening? They didn't answer. The mother reached into her clutch, pulled out an envelope. Wedding planning details, no doubt, and handed it back to Emily without a word. The father patted Emily's arm, brief, clinical. Then they left. Just like that. Emily turned to her parents, shell-shocked. "They're backing out," she whispered. "They think we're... God, they think we're a liability." Her mother didn't answer. Her father just sat back down, looking decades older. Dean Halvorsen cleared his throat, his voice suddenly very careful. "On behalf of the university, I want to sincerely apologize to Ms. Mai Reynolds." He looked at me directly. "For the events that took place this evening. We do not condone public financial expectations placed upon guests, and certainly not ones crafted under false pretenses." His tone was polished. But his eyes? They were scared. He knew this wasn't just a story, it was a scandal. One that had been live-streamed, clipped, uploaded, and shared faster than his PR team could react. The trustees were already gone, likely huddled in a strategy room somewhere, drafting statements and contingency plans. My mother tried one last time, voice barely above a whisper. "Please, just fix it." I turned toward her slowly. "I didn't break it," I said. "You did." And this time, there was no applause. No gasps. Just the truth. Echoing louder than any microphone could have carried. By morning, it was everywhere. My phone buzzed non-stop as I sat in my kitchen, barefoot in sweats, sipping from the same mug I'd used the night I got my first promotion. Except now, instead of spreadsheets and contracts, my inbox was overflowing with praise. "This woman is a legend. Family or not, boundaries matter. Good for her." She said no and meant it. Someone had stitched clips of my mother's rant and Aaron's rebuttal side by side, set to dramatic violin music. It had nearly 1 million views. People were quoting me like I'd delivered a TED Talk, not just defended myself from a public mugging. "You're not the family wallet." That wasn't generosity, that was coercion. One tweet read, "I want to be her when I grow up." Period. My LinkedIn exploded too. Colleagues, former interns, even competitors were messaging, "Proud to know you. Masterclass in grace under fire." If you ever want a keynote, even people I barely remembered from business school were reposting the video with captions like, "She always was the smartest person in the room." I hadn't asked for any of it. But for once, I didn't feel guilty for being seen. I turned on the TV. Morning news had picked it up. "Viral video of a graduation dinner gone wrong has the internet buzzing," the anchor said. "A corporate executive blindsided by her family, expected to foot the bill for her cousin's law school, live, on camera." B-roll played of me standing, voice steady. Then Aaron. Then my mother's trembling face. I muted it. I didn't need the play-by-play, I lived it. What mattered now wasn't the spectacle, it was that the narrative had flipped. I was no longer the cold, childless cousin. I was the woman who chose herself, and didn't flinch when the cost of doing so was public. They thought they could shame me into silence. Instead, they turned the world into my witness. They rang the buzzer just after noon. I almost didn't answer, but some part of me, the part that had once believed in birthday cards and forgiveness, walked to the panel and pressed talk. "Who is it?" "It's your mother," came the brittle reply. "And Emily." "We need to talk." Need. Not want. I opened the door. They stepped in like ghosts, thin, careful, too aware of how far the fall had been. Emily clutched her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. My mother wore sunglasses indoors, though she wasn't fooling anyone. I didn't offer tea. I didn't ask them to sit. "We're not here to fight," my mother said first. "No," I said, "you're here to save face." She flinched. "This has been very hard on the family." "Has it?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because for me, it's been clarity." Emily stepped forward, her voice quiet. "I didn't know." "I swear. She told me you were taking care of it, that it was already arranged." "I believe you," I said. "But believing you doesn't mean I owe you anything." Emily blinked fast, then nodded. She looked like someone who had finally, painfully, learned that family loyalty doesn't mean family leverage. My mother, however, wasn't done. "We were under pressure," she said tightly. "Your father was worried about appearances. There were donors." "I don't care," I said. "You lied. Publicly. And when I told the truth, you tried to make me look ungrateful." Vindictive. Her lips trembled. "That wasn't the intention." "No," I said. "The intention was control. And you lost it." She was quiet now. Emily whispered, People aren't answering our calls anymore. It's like everyone turned on us overnight. They didn't turn, I said. They just saw who you really are. For a moment, the room was still. Then my mother asked, like it was a favor, like it was owed. Can't you just post something? Say it was a misunderstanding? That things are fine now? I stared at her. No, I said, you don't get to rewrite this. You're really going to let this destroy your family? She snapped, the mask slipping again. I didn't destroy anything, I said. You did. I just stopped protecting the illusion. I walked to the door and opened it. Neither of them moved. I think we're done here. Emily nodded. Quiet. Hollow. But my mother. She hesitated, like she still couldn't believe her grip was gone. And maybe that was the most honest thing she'd felt in years. They left without another word. And I didn't watch them go. The door clicked shut behind them, and the silence that followed felt like peace. Real peace. Not the kind I used to manufacture at dinner tables, nodding through condescension, smiling through guilt. This silence was earned. Clean. Mine. I didn't cry. There was nothing left to grieve. I padded barefoot back to the kitchen and reheated my coffee. The mug still read, CEO of my own life. A gag gift from my old team, once ironic, now prophetic. My phone buzzed. Aaron. Aaron Tran, you okay? I stared at the message for a long second, thumb hovering over the screen. Me, yeah. Actually, yeah. I think I finally am. There was no ceremony in the aftermath, no epilogue scroll, just quiet. My mother hadn't messaged again. My father didn't call. Emily sent a single, short text a day later. Emily, I get it now. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. But because silence was my answer. Some lessons don't need to be corrected, they need to echo. The media cycle moved on, as it always does. New scandals replaced old ones. My name slipped from the trending lists and settled back into inboxes and strategy meetings and the quiet work of building things. But something had shifted. People treated me differently now. Not because of pity. Not because I was a victim. But because I had drawn a line. Publicly. Unapologetically. And refused to let anyone shove me back over it. I still thought about the little girl I used to be. The one who worked late, saved every penny, smiled through backhanded compliments just to feel like she belonged. She'd be proud of me now. She'd see the woman I became and whisper, "We finally did it." Not the job. Not the money. The choice. To stop bleeding for people who only ever handed me bandages with interest rates. To choose me. For once. And forever. The sun cut across the skyline in golden lines, casting long shadows between the buildings, like the world itself was stretching awake. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching the city breathe beneath me. No calls, no crises, just the hum of traffic far below and the soft click of my email, refreshing. The view hadn't changed, but I had. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next ask. The next guilt trip wrapped in a holiday invitation or a family emergency. I wasn't actually included in, just expected to pay for. That weight was gone. I checked my schedule, light by choice. A design meeting at 11, strategy call at 2. No dinners, no, just swing by for 5 minutes, no emotionally loaded ambushes masked as family celebrations. I had space now, real space. To think. To build. To rest. To decide what I wanted without someone else's fingerprint smudging the glass. The irony? I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Emily. Not even at my mother. They played roles they'd been rehearsing all their lives. But I'd finally stepped off the stage, torn up the script, refused to read the lines written for me. Now, I was the author. The day stretched ahead, clean and unmarked. No headlines. No cameras. No apologies dressed in manipulation. Just me. And that was more than enough. I turned from the window, opened a fresh document on my laptop. A blank page. A new beginning. No strings attached.